Jake Paul, the infamous YouTube star turned professional boxer, has never been one to shy away from controversy. From his loud personality to his unfiltered opinions, he's made a name for himself by pushing boundaries and taking on anyone who tries to bring him down. Recently, Jake was invited to appear on a high-profile talk show where the host and a few special guests were prepared to challenge him on everything from his boxing career to his personal life. They thought they could humiliate him, maybe get him to stutter or lose his cool on live TV. But they didn't know what they were up against. It started innocently enough, with the host asking Jake about his boxing journey, but it quickly took a turn for the worse. The guests, who had clearly been briefed to challenge Jake's credibility as a boxer, started taking shots at him one by one. "You're a YouTuber, not a real boxer," one guest quipped, laughing as the audience snickered along. "Your victories are all scripted. You only fight people who can't fight back," another added. It was clear they were trying to diminish his accomplishments in the ring, to portray him as someone who wasn't truly dedicated to the sport. They aimed to belittle his achievements and paint him as a joke in the boxing world, hoping to provoke a reaction from him that would make the audience lose faith in his abilities. As the insults continued to fly, the room grew tense. The host smirked, thinking he was getting the better of Jake, while the guests egged each other on. The audience could feel the anticipation, waiting for Jake to lose his composure, waiting for him to either storm out or get flustered by the constant mockery. The studio lights felt hot, and the buzz in the air grew louder as Jake sat there, cool and collected, listening to every word without a flicker of anger in his eyes. He didn't bite the bait. He didn't get defensive or try to explain himself. He simply sat there, his body language calm, exuding a sense of confidence that only someone who truly believes in themselves can. Then the moment came. The host, thinking they had pushed Jake to the edge, leaned in with a final jab. "So, Jake, if you're really so tough, why don't you put on the gloves and show us what you've got?" The audience waited in suspense for Jake's reaction. This was it. Would he break under the pressure or let the insults slide? Would he fall into the trap of anger and frustration, or would he take the high road? With the crowd waiting on tenterhooks, Jake leaned forward in his chair, his face still wearing that trademark confident smirk. "If you think it's a joke," he said coolly, "how about I put my gloves on and show you how real this is?" His words were not just a comeback, they were a challenge. The tone in his voice was steady, not aggressive, but firm enough that it silenced the entire room. The guests who had been mocking him were now speechless, caught off guard by the calm and measured way Jake had responded. There was no anger in his eyes, no hint of frustration, just a confidence that oozed from every part of him. He didn't need to shout, to curse, or to retaliate. His quiet assurance in that moment was more powerful than any harsh words or insults could have been. The atmosphere in the studio shifted instantly. The host, who had thought he was making a fool of Jake, now looked uncomfortable. His smug expression faded as he realized he had misjudged the situation. The guests, who had been eager to take their shots, were now fumbling for words. They had been expecting Jake to lash out, to give them the ammunition they needed to continue mocking him. But what they got instead was a response that completely disarmed them. The silence in the room was deafening. Even the audience, who had been expecting drama and conflict, was now in awe of Jake's ability to shut down the mockery with such ease. It wasn't just about the words Jake said. It was the way he said them. His demeanor, his composure, and the sheer control he had over the situation turned the tables completely. What was supposed to be a moment of humiliation for him had turned into a victory. A moment where Jake Paul proved that no matter how much people try to tear him down, he would always rise above it. But Jake didn't stop there. Instead of getting defensive or letting the awkward silence linger, he took the opportunity to turn the conversation around. He didn't engage in a verbal battle. He simply focused on the truth. "I've earned everything I have," Jake continued, his voice calm but unwavering. "I've worked hard, trained harder, and put in the hours that it takes to be in that ring. If you want to see what a real fighter looks like, come to one of my matches. I'll let my fists do the talking." With those words, Jake once again took control of the narrative. He wasn't here to justify himself to anyone. He was here to show that his actions, not his words, were what truly mattered. The rest of the interview was a complete turnaround. What was supposed to be a moment of embarrassment for Jake had instead turned into a showcase of his strength, both mentally and physically. The guests, who had been trying to tear him down, now had nothing left to say. The host, who had assumed he would make Jake uncomfortable, now sat there in silence, realizing that he had been outplayed. The tension that had filled the studio moments before had been replaced with a sense of respect, even if it was unspoken. As the segment ended, the audience erupted into applause, not for Jake's insults or comebacks, but for his ability to remain calm and confident in the face of ridicule. In that moment, Jake Paul didn't just shut down the critics, he made a statement. He proved that no matter how much people try to bring him down, Jake Paul was never one to be embarrassed. He wasn't just fighting in the ring, he was fighting for his place in the world, and he was going to keep winning, no matter what anyone said. Jake's ability to control the situation with such confidence and poise left a lasting impression. It was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to criticism is not to fight back, but to stand your ground with quiet strength. In a world where everyone is quick to react, Jake Paul showed that taking control of the situation and staying true to yourself is the ultimate way to win. And as for the critics who thought they could embarrass him, well, they had just been shut down, and they weren't going to forget it anytime soon.